It's Warrant, right here on your classic metal show from their Belly to Belly release with Indian Giver.
Yeah.
I just thought that would be a good lead-in song.
All right.
Since we're going to talk about the Indians.
Oh, good.
and not the good kind either.
No.
Not the Native Americans.
Are you watching the chat room, by the way?
Yeah, a little bit.
I just set it off.
What did you put in there?
I guess they're talking about these candy molds or cookie molds or something that are shaped like an asshole.
Yeah. I saw that about putting up some filling in the middle of the heart for the Grinch or something.
So somebody said in there about to Jackal one, what color would he want? White, dark, chocolate, or pink? And he said pink. And I said, I want mine extra dark. I want some cancer veg.
Nice.
Needless to say, that didn't go over real well.
I want some heart-shaped box.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't there some line in that song from Nirvana, Heart-Shaped Box, about something about eat your cancer when it turns black?
Yep, it is. Look at you, the Nirvana fan.
It's hard not to have heard that song. They only played it like every other hour.
Yeah, and like the worst tune on that record, too.
Yeah, it was terrible.
It was not a good song, but good album, just not a good song.
Sure. All right. Well, this is something that we've been threatening to do for quite a while now.
I couldn't be happier that this is finally happening.
It's finally here. The day has arrived.
I've been waiting for this since I came back.
Well, let me set this up, and then I'll play the official bumper, and I will regale you with at least one good story.
Okay, great.
Because there's plenty of stories to tell, and I will dole them out, over time.
Okay.
So I don't want to shoot the whole wad, at once, but I do have one really good story.
Okay.
To share tonight. But anyway, in my previous employment, I signed on with a company that was owned by Indians, and I'm not talking about Native Americans. I'm talking about Indians from India.
You're talking about strap a bomb to themselves, Indians.
Well, I don't know if the Indians are kind of like Al Qaeda. I don't think they're like that.
Okay.
But they are Hindu.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't eat meat.
Yeah.
And they have their customs, and they have their belief system as a lot of third world countries do.
Right.
And that's all well and fine. If that's your belief system and that's how you want to live your life, by all means go to it.
But it was weird for you to come in and have to walk around the cow every day, right?
Well, I'm going to preface this by saying that regardless of your belief system, there is a certain amount of business acumen that I, as a business person, kind of expect, I guess.
Sure.
And to see that this business acumen, this normal, what you want to call it, what would you call it? It's kind of an unspoken thing in business. It's
business etiquette.
Etiquette. That's the word I'm looking for. Perfect. It's business etiquette that you expect when you go to work for a company. This company had none of it.
From the sounds of it, less than none of it.
Yeah. They had no business etiquette whatsoever. None. And the reason why, and I had to do some studying on this just to understand it so I could cope with the environment.
Okay.
If you don't know anything about Indians,
right,
they are driven by ideology.
Okay.
And it's kind of funny because this all ties in. The person who brought me to understand about ideology was actually Blackie Lawless himself.
Wow.
During an interview that I conducted with him back in, I believe it was 1998 or 1999, somewhere around there, I had an opportunity to sit with Blackie Lawless one-on-one for an hour.
Right.
And interview him. And he discussed ideology with, no, actually it was after 9/11.
Okay.
That now that I come back, because we're talking about what was the album that they released after 9/11?
What a Holy Terror?
Holy Terror. That was it, because that's what that was all about. And he discussed with me ideology of people who are so steeped in their belief system,
right,
that they do not think outside of their belief system.
Sure.
That rational thought does not enter in with how they conduct themselves on a daily basis. They're so, and I'm going to use a term here that I don't necessarily know that it's the correct term, but it, for all intents and purposes, it kind of fits. They're steeped in their brainwashed ways.
Nice.
that they can't think outside of that.
Right.
It's not a thinking thing. It's sort of like a pre-programmed thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if, from what I understand from the Indian culture, they live within what they call a caste system.
Okay.
Are you familiar with a caste system?
Couldn't tell you the first thing about it.
A caste system, they have levels in their society. You've got it's kind of like what we used to have, or what England used to have centuries ago, where you have like the aristocracy, and then you got the people who serve them, and then you got the lesser people, and then you got the peasants.
Right. Okay.
That's the caste system. So if you're of means, you're like at the top of the food chain, more or less.
Okay.
And everybody else is under you at different levels. They call that the caste system.
Okay.
And India has the caste system.
All right.
Well, if you are in the upper level of the caste system in India, you are steeped in this ideology that the world is there to serve you.
Okay.
They're there to serve your needs, that you're just a peasant.
So it's real similar to like Saddam Hussein's Iraq. If you were royalty, then everybody else was just shit.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is.
Sure. Okay.
Well, the problem with that here in this country, in the United States, is that a lot of these people from India come here expecting the caste system to still stay in place.
Okay.
So they come here with especially if you were in the upper echelon of the caste system, they treat you as if you're one of their underlings and that you're just there to serve them.
Right. Oh, God.
And that's the attitude that they have, is that, you're a peasant and I'm, top of the food chain here and you're just my peasant,
Right.
Well, that doesn't fly here in the U.S. That is not proper business etiquette in the United States.
Right. It sure doesn't fly with you.
It doesn't fly. Well, it doesn't fly with most people that I'm aware of.
Yeah, but a lot of people would put up with it for a check.
Yeah, perhaps. So anyway, the reason I even got involved with these people was because of, during the 2008 financial crunch, I lost my business.
Right.
I was in business with my brother-in-law, and we were in the financial sector of the business that got hit by the 2008 financial crunch, and we basically lost our business.
Right.
That's what it boiled down to. So I had to, strike out and go find something to do. And the girl that I was involved with at the time, she was passing my resume out to her various customers.
Right.
Because she was in sales. And she basically passed my resume off to them and said, hey, if you're in need of a guy, a good operations type of guy, give this guy a call.
Right.
Well, they did. Well, I went in and spoke with them, and we discussed what they had in mind and whatnot, and so on and so forth. And they offered me a position, and I took it.
Right.
Without knowing or understanding who these people are or what they're all about.
Sure.
So basically, getting involved with them was a very rude awakening, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say.
Just a little backstory there. That is how I got involved with this company that was Indian owned.
Okay.
And the experiences that I had for 2.5 years.
Right.
Which you're well aware of a lot of them.
I'm aware of a lot of them, and it has killed me for all of this time to not tell these stories.
Yes. So now that I am disinvolved with them,
right.
I feel that I can now bring them to the table,
sure,
and tell my Indian tales.
This is so good.
So Wheezy, in his infinite wisdom and his sense of humor, and he gets the classic metal show.
Right.
He took it upon himself to put together this bumper for us, just called Indian Tales.
Awesome.
So strap in, kids, for the first edition of many to come of Indian Tales with Neeley and Chris.
Wendell, this is your boss, your employer. I command you to come back to work. The Penske files are piling up on your desk, and your TPS reports are overdue. I will forgive your absence because you are a radio jockey, but you must kiss all 4 arms of Ganesha and bring me 1 pound of curry as penalty. I will expect your service Monday morning. Do not disappoint me, Wendell.
You would not believe how close to reality that is.
I love it.
So Wheezy, thank you, sir.
That rivals the very best bumpers we have.
Sure it is.
I love that bumper.
Yeah, it's so good.
So great.
It is. Just to kind of make reference to something that Wheezy put in there about being a radio jockey.
Yeah.
Being that it was known that I hosted the classic metal show.
Mm-hmm.
It was surprising the number of things that I could get away with saying in that office.
Sure.
Because I was according to my former employer, he's a radio jockey, is what they called me.
Not a horse jockey, but a radio jockey.
He's a radio jockey, not a disc jockey or radio host. I was a radio jockey.
Radio jockey.
I could get away with saying a lot of things that probably most employers would never put up with.
Right.
And I would often spout out things that were just flat out wrong. And people would ask my boss, how come you let him get away with saying that? And goes, oh, he's just a radio jockey. Like, just a jolly joker.
Yeah, of course.
So that's why that's in there, radio jockey. Well, anyway, I'm going to start this Indian Tales off with something that just totally blew me away.
All right.
These individuals that I worked for, I don't really understand their business philosophy except for maximizing profits at any cost.
Okay.
That's the only way that I can describe this to you.
Right.
That customer service was not a priority.
No.
Product quality was not a priority. Employee satisfaction was not a priority.
Right.
The only priority is that we made 40% profit on everything we did, regardless of what we had to do it.
Right.
That seriously was the ideology there.
That was it.
That was it. So anyway, they did not promote any kind of training or orientation or any kind of workshops at all.
Right.
They just wanted you to basically come in and just sit down and just take over where the last guy left off. And believe me, there were plenty of last guys that left off. That place was a revolving door.
There was literally, I would say about once every
2 months.
2 months, you were calling me saying, guess what? Another new project manager, another one left. Or
they went through 10 project managers in a span of 24 months. About every 2 months. They lasted about 8 weeks.
10 project managers.
Yep.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell a story about a project manager.
Okay.
A project manager was hired. His name was shit, I can't remember his first name because he was only there a short time. He was a good guy, smart guy.
Sure.
But he came in not knowing anything as far as the company was concerned, that is.
Okay.
And the first thing on his plate, he was told, without knowing anything about anything,
right,
was that he needed to put together a presentation to do orientation and training on some equipment that had been installed before he got hired over in Cleveland.
Nice. Over in my neighborhood.
Yeah. He needed to put together a presentation on operations, safety, and maintenance.
Okay.
On this equipment that was installed prior to him being hired.
Right.
And he needed to know everything and anything about it, but there was no files on it, there was no documentation on it, and there was nobody currently employed there that knew anything about it.
Right. And I'm just going to interject a little bit, and I don't know how far you want to take this, so I won't. I'll just leave this vague and let you fill in the blanks. But the equipment that you're talking about was not like a spark plug for a car.
No, we're talking industrial size, plant size, conveying equipment, machinery.
Right. Big machinery that would have a lot of moving parts and a lot of installation and, maintenance and things that have to go to make this thing work right.
Exactly.
Not just some simple widget that you put up on a wall and it works.
No, this is machinery. This is large pieces of machinery.
Right.
So he says to me, he'd been there maybe 6 weeks total. He'd been there so far. Mm-hmm. And it was a Monday morning, and he needed to make a trip over to Cleveland on a Tuesday.
Okay.
And go over and do this training with the plant personnel.
And to be clear, the plant personnel are the customer, not your employees.
Yeah,
right?
not our employees. They are the customer who bought this equipment.
So so in essence, this presentation that he's getting ready to do is a piece of what they bought.
Exactly, because they paid for the startup and training of this equipment.
Right. So this training that they paid for is now being written and trained by a guy that's been there less than a week.
Basically, yes. So this guy, obviously, he doesn't know anything about what's going on.
Right.
Now, it's a Monday morning.
Mm-hmm.
My boss was out of town for whatever reason. He was off doing something. I'm not really sure, but he'd been gone that week.
Okay.
So I walked in, and this project manager says to me, hey, you got a minute? I'm just like, yeah, what's up? He says, do you know anything about this equipment in Cleveland? And I did know because I'd been there, 6, maybe 8 months already.
Okay. Right.
And I said, yeah, I kind of know a little bit about it. And he says, well, I was told I need to put together a training presentation, and I need to drive over to Cleveland tomorrow and train 3 different shifts of, plant personnel on operation, maintenance, and so forth on this equipment, but I don't know anything about it.
Right.
So I said, well, I can tell you what I know.
Okay.
So I'm standing there explaining to him what it is that I know. Well, my boss's brother owned the companies.
Okay.
And during the time I was standing there telling this project manager what I knew about this equipment, he had walked in, and I saw him walk in. I didn't, think anything of it.
Right.
He walked in, went into his office, and closed the door.
Okay.
Didn't faze me one way or the other. I didn't think anything of it.
Right.
So I kind of gave this guy the cliff notes of what I knew about the equipment. Then I went on to my desk.
Okay.
Well, about 8 minutes later, I was on the phone with a customer, and this Indian girl that they had working there as an administrative girl, she comes running over into my desk while I'm sitting there talking to a customer on the phone. She comes running up to the desk, and she's standing there dancing around like she's doing the pee dance or something.
All right.
All frantic.
Right.
She's standing there. So I put my hand over the phone, and I said, "What's up?"
Right.
And she said, "Madhu needs to see you."
Madhu.
Madhu.
Is that his picture I put up in the chat room?
I don't know. I got to look. Let me take a look. Yeah, it's pretty close. And I said, okay, let me finish up with this call, and I'll go see what he needs.
All right.
So I get back with my customer. Less than a minute, literally 60 seconds.
Yep.
She comes running back to my desk and standing there all nervous and all upset and just frantic.
Okay.
So I put my hand over the phone. Hang on a minute. Put my hand over the phone. What's up? Madhu needs to see you right away.
All right.
I'm just like, all right.
He's going to have to fucking wait a minute.
So I tell my customer, listen, something's up. I got to go. I'll have to call you back.
Right.
Hang up the phone.
Right. So you're already in bad form with that customer.
Yeah.
But, okay.
So I get up, walk in there. He's sitting at his desk. I said, you want to see me about something? Not that I could tell over the brown skin color, but his face was just beet red. just beet red.
All right.
I mean, he literally looked like a pimple ready to pop. I mean, his face was I've never seen anybody's face so red.
Nice.
And he starts screaming at me. I mean, not just speaking loudly. I mean, screaming.
Fuck that.
And he starts screaming at me. I'm going to call this project manager Todd. I'm going to say his name is Todd. Why were you talking to Todd? I mean, screaming, and I'm only like at a third of the level.
Right.
And I go, excuse me? He goes, why were you speaking to Todd?
Because he asked me a question.
And I said, he asked me about the project in Cleveland. And he says, no talking on Mondays. I said, what?
I know this story.
He said, no talking on Mondays. I said, I don't get you. Where are you going with this? You're not to be talking on Mondays. That's what I mean, that's literally how he came at me. And I said to him, and mind you, I stand about 6 foot. I stand 6 foot tall.
Right.
You know, I'm pretty broad in the shoulders. I'm not a small guy. I'm not a big guy, but I'm not a small guy.
Right.
Well, this guy probably half my size.
Nice.
Okay, small, skinny, frail.
Right.
And I said, first of all, if you and I are going to have a conversation, I said, there's no need for you to be screaming at me this way. If you want to discuss something with me, I'll be glad to discuss it with you. I said, but if you're going to scream at me like that, I said, this conversation is over.
Nice.
and he just kind of calmed down, for just a minute.
Right.
And he says to me, I don't need you to give me a lesson on how to conduct myself.
Oh, fuck off.
That's what he said to me.
Fuck that.
I said, I'm not giving you a lesson on how to conduct yourself, but I will not stand here and allow you to speak that way to me.
Right.
That's what I told him. So he calmed down, and I go, so what's the problem here? He says, why were you talking to Todd? I said, I told you he needs to know about that Cleveland project, and he's got to go over there, and your brother wants him to go over there and teach a class, but he doesn't know anything about it. I said, so he was asking me if I could help him with that. He says, well, Monday is not the time to have those kind of discussions. So, of course, I'm just like, what is this with Monday?
Right.
I'm just like a total loss. I mean, I felt like an idiot here. It's just like, because this was like the third time he mentioned Monday.
Right.
And I go, I'm not following you here. What is the problem? He says, if you want to have those kind of discussions, you can talk about this over lunch or after work. I said, well, this is a work-related issue. I said, do you Indians have a policy against discussing projects with their coworkers? He said, no, it's not an Indian thing. He says, it's a business thing. And I said, I'm still not following you here.
Right.
He says, Monday sets the tone for the week. I said, okay, and? He says, Monday should be answering emails and making phone calls, not speaking with your coworkers. That's what he told me. And I said, I've never heard of such a thing. And he said, for someone who's been in business as long as you should know this.
Get the fuck.
That's what he told me. And I said, I have never heard that. I said, I don't understand it. I don't know where you're coming from. I said, so let me get this straight. So if a coworker asks me to help him, I'm not supposed to help them. Is that your policy here? Is that what I'm understanding?
Right.
And he said, no, not on Mondays. That's what he said.
Not on Mondays.
Not on Mondays, because Monday sets the tone for the week.
So Tuesday it would have been okay.
Well, here's the thing. So then he started getting all, raising his voice again. His voice started gradually raising again. Mm-hmm. And I said, I don't know about you. I said, but I've been in business long enough to understand that communication is a very important part of business, whether it's a Monday or not. And he goes, well, you need to understand that Monday is the time to set the tone for the week, and this is not the time to be discussing, things with your coworkers. And I said, well, once again, I said, if you're going to start using that tone with me, I said, this conversation is over.
Well, he's probably happy about that because it was Monday.
And he goes, you can go.
Gee, thanks, Dick.
Just like that. So basically I walked out of his office. So the inner office joke among me and Explain Me Guy and the other people that used to work there, that it was muted Monday.
Well, I know it was a joke for me and you. Every time you would call me on a Monday, I'd be like, don't, dude, it's Monday.
Yeah. So that was a running joke in the office that it was muted Monday.
Right.
So that was one of them, and that was my first brush with them. But when I got up in his face and basically told him that I wasn't going to allow him to speak to me that way, in the following 2 years, because I'd been there 2 years, I was there a total of 2 years and 6 months, and this was about 6 months in.
Mm-hmm.
Never looked at me crooked ever again. Not even once. And I'll tell you the reason why. And I'm going to leave this story
for next time
for other stories. But if you know anything about the Indian culture, the only power that they have toward their quote unquote underlings is screaming and yelling. They control by intimidation.
Right.
And if you're not intimidated and you don't react to it, or you're not, floored by it, they've got nothing else.
Right.
That's all they've got. So they come at you screaming and yelling to try to get control right away.
Right.
But once that's done, and if you have zero reaction to it, they've got nothing else.
And then they just fold.
They become cowards.
Right. Well, I know this. I know you and I talked probably, I definitely know every week since you worked there. And I don't think a week went by where my reaction wasn't, I would beat this motherfucker's ass.
Right.
It was like a weekly thing. You would tell me story after story, and I was always like, fuck that. No way would I put up with that. There's no way would I have put up with that.
Right.
Dude would have yelled at me like that, and I'd have fucking slammed him.
Yeah. Well, I did stand up, and I did lean over that desk, and I told him, I said, I am not going to allow you to speak that way to me.
Yeah, I'm not your bitch. Fuck off.
And that was the end of it. And that never happened again. Never.
Then he had fun. Then he thought you were hilarious.
Yeah, I'm a hilarious son of a bitch.
Because you were a jockey.
Yeah, radio jockey. So that is one of the Indian tales. I thought that was a good story to start things off.
That is
but there are just some atrocious stories I have to tell.
Oh, dude, I can't wait till you tell. And I know you have told these stories, and they're still fun to listen to. But at some point, you have to get more into some of the stuff when you were traveling.
Well, if you remember some things when we're in the story, that will just kind of prompt me to really, flesh out the details.
Sure.
But it's just disgusting. And again, I don't have a problem with people and their belief system and their culture or whatever. But when their lives or their way that they deal with people are dictated by that, and they can't use rational thought,
right?
Instead of just being pre-programmed with their response, I don't have any respect for that.
Nope.
I like people who can sit down at a table and discuss things and make decisions based on fact rather than, well, this is my pre-programmed response and that's how I'm going to deal with it.
Right.
Because one size does not fit all.
No, not at all.
So, but it was just a bizarro world.
It was. Jackal1 in the chat room wants to know, could you talk on Mondays after you got in his face?
No. No, of course not.
Oh, that would set the wrong tone.
Yeah. Monday is to set the tone for the week.
Yeah.
So I guess if you blow your Monday, the whole rest of the week is just blown.
Nice.
Because you can't make adjustments.
Man, all I'd be trying to do is blow up Monday then.
But that's just the whole attitude that, Monday sets the tone for the week, and if you blow it on Monday, your whole rest of the week is just fucked.
Well, here's the part of the story I want to know. What happened with the training? Because you helped the guy on Monday.
Well, I think we emailed back and forth. Even though he was in the next cubicle over, I think that I emailed him an explanation.
So you're literally sitting within a foot of this guy.
Yeah, I couldn't talk to him, but I could email him.
You could have solved it in probably 10 minutes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
But instead you took 2 hours trading emails back.
Basically, yes.
Fucking brilliant.
Yep. Absolutely.
Fucking idiot.
I know. But that again, that's the whole ideology speaking there, rather than go, hey, you know what? You guys ought to sit down and work this out because you know a little bit about it and he doesn't know anything about it and, blah, 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 and we want to do the best we can for the customer.
Right.
No, it's muted Mondays. It's Monday sets the tone for the week, so there's no talking. Yeah, let's not worry about the customer who just spent $150,000 on equipment and expects quality training.
Right.
Let's worry about muted Monday.
You know, that 150,000 that means nothing. We already cashed that check.
Exactly. We've already got that in our pocket, so fuck them and their training.
Okay, what if the money was dependent on the training? Do you think he'd have let you talk to him?
I don't know that answer.
If you had to guess.
No. I would say no. I would say that they would stay with their ideology rather than use common sense.
He would lose the client over.
Well, oh yeah, you're saying if we didn't have the money yet?
Like if when he went and did the training, at the end of the training, if they were satisfied, they were going to sign the check.
Yeah, but see, the thing is the policy is that the money had to be already paid before we sent somebody out to the site to do the startup and training.
Right? No, I get that. I'm just saying.
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
If the money was hinged on it, what do you think they would have done? Do you think he'd allowed you to speak to him on Monday? Or not?
I don't know. I'm gonna say probably yes, because if money was involved, well, that was the important part.
Right.
You know,
if you would have said to this guy, "I'll give you $10 to let me talk to him today,"
what? Well, again, how does that benefit me?
It's not about benefiting you. I'm just saying, just because I know we're going to get into the ridiculous level of
cheapness
with this company
and the almighty dollar, and how money meant everything, and people and efforts and quality meant nothing.
Nothing. It was all about every nickel.
Every nickel.
So I'm just wondering if you would have just pulled a $10 bill out of your pocket and said, "Look, Magoo, I'm going to hand you $10 if you let me tell him how to do this."
Right.
Do you think he'd have let you do it?
Yeah, it's hard to say, man.
But it's definitely not a no.
Yeah, it's hard
to say. It's
not
a for sure no.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
What's funny is I know what's coming with these stories. If it was up to me, we would tell them all fucking night long, but I know I would just completely blow the wad.
Yeah, I got so many to tell that I can spread it out through the year.
Through the year? Through about 5 years. You literally told me these stories every goddamn day for fucking 2 years.
Yeah. But under what I consider normal circumstances,
yeah,
these stories are just hinge on the ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it all boils down to ideology.
Yeah.
And I don't have any respect for that, especially when it gets in the way of rational thought.
Right.
It's just my personal thoughts and opinion on that.
I love it.
Yep. So there's your first installment of Indian Tales.
Dun, dun. I think you got to play the bumper one more time.
All right. Well, we got to tip the hat to Wheezy because it was so good. So, all right, Indian Tales.
Wendell, this is your boss, your employer. I command you to come back to work. The Penske files are piling up on your desk, and your TPS reports are overdue. I will forgive your absence because you are a radio jockey, but you must kiss all 4 arms of Ganesha and bring me 1 pound of curry as penalty. I will expect your service Monday morning. Do not disappoint me, Wendell.
So there you go. Indian Tales. You like that?
That is so awesome, that bumper.
It is.